Welcome to the frontier, no man's land, where nature is king and only the rugged are capable of withstanding the untold forces of nature. But before you go off to tame the wild on your Nissan Frontier, we suggest you make the most out of your truck. Hi, I'm Ben with Rough Country, and we've got a 2.5-inch suspension lift for your Nissan Frontier that'll give you better approach angles and descent angles to tackle those obstacles you might come across in the wild frontier. Take a look at our installation and place your order today.
Alright guys, first step of course is to remove the tires and wheels. Don't forget to chalk the rear tires if you're on the ground doing this. Now the first thing we have to take apart is our ABS plug. Really we're just going to unplug it and then we're going to take it off the frame mount here and at the lower location. And the reason why you do that, if you stretch this wire or this cable, it will cause your ABS light to be on your dash cluster. We're going to move down to the sway bar link and we're going to remove the fastener on the lower arm. Once that fastener is off, you can push back the sway bar link and take the pressure off the sway bar. Now that the sway bar link is free, we're going to move around to the knuckle and we're going to take out our cotter pins on the tie rod end and on the ball joint. And once you've got these cotter pins loose, then we'll start removing fasteners to free up our knuckle so that we can get the strut out of there. As I said, both cotter pins are free, so now we're going to remove the fastener on the tie rod end. And once you have the fastener off, give the hammer a few taps, knock the tie rod end loose. And before we knock out our ball joint, we're putting a jack stand under the lower arm. And the reason why we're doing that, you just want to have a little support under that arm, because with the ball joint loose, the only thing holding the arm up is the strut itself. So we're going to loosen the fastener on the upper ball joint. Give it a few taps on the top of the knuckle. That'll free up the ball joint so that you can let the knuckle relax. With the knuckle out of the way, you remove your fasteners for the top of the strut. Now we'll remove the lower strut bolt. With the lower strut bolt out, the strut is free, and we're going to install our spacer. Before we install our spacer, we're going to go ahead and push our studs in, and we're going to tighten down the fasteners that come with them. What we're doing is embedding them into the strut spacer. With those embedded and secured, we'll install the spacer on top of the strut. And we'll go ahead and tighten down these fasteners on top of the strut with a wrench, maybe a screwdriver or a pry bar or a punch in the eyelet of the strut. That lets you really torque that down. We're going to reinstall our strut back now. And we'll tighten down our top 3 fasteners. Once those are tight, we'll go down to the lower mount, reinstall the bolt. And we'll, of course, tighten it down. Now that our strut is securely installed, we're going to put our knuckle back in. We're going to push the ball joint through the upper mount of the knuckle. And you'll get that fastener started and you'll tighten it down. Once that is tight and pull back through the knuckle, you'll reinstall the cotter pin. Now we move back up front. Go ahead and put your sway bar link in. Tighten that bolt back down. And now for the tie rod end. Make sure the threaded stud is going up into the knuckle. Once the tie rod end is tight, you'll put your cotter pin back in and bend it around and lock that away. And our last step on the front, of course, is to reconnect and reinstall all of our ABS wires. It's pretty simple. You've got the one rubber plug that just pops back into the holder, and then you slide your plastic clamp back on and then reconnect it. Alright, now we're going to remove our rear tire. Again, if you're on the ground, you'll chalk the front. With the rear tire off, go ahead and put a jack stand under the axle. And next we're going to remove our lower shock mount bolt. Once this bolt is removed, we'll start taking off the fasteners for the U-bolt. Once we get all the fasteners off the U-bolts, you'll disconnect the ABS wire, and then you're going to dislodge the lower shock mounting, and that's going to let the axle drop. With no U-bolts holding on the spring, we've got the axle lower where we can put our 1.5-inch block in. We'll lock that into the axle, and then we'll lower the truck back down onto the block, and using a little pressure, lock the spring into the 1.5-inch block, reinstall our U-bolts and the saddle, and then connect that with fasteners. We'll tighten those down. Then we'll reconnect our ABS wire, and then we'll put our lower shock mount back in, install the bolt, tighten that down, and the rear is done. Here's some before and after shots of the 2.5-inch kit on the Frontier, and it definitely gives it a much more aggressive stance. For Rough Country Suspensions, I'm Ben. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you later.